Hello, and welcome to another evening of my 15 minutes on the Old Folks Boogie 2 YouTube channel. I own both. I'm the only person that appears so far on this channel. Today is the 23rd of January, 2020. It is my 23rd day of filming this episode, this 15 minutes. I've been doing it since January 1st. I'm going to hopefully continue to do it through the rest of the year. Get 366 episodes out of it. Anyway, tonight, I actually want to talk about something that's pretty close to me, something that I believe in pretty wholeheartedly, and that is the legalization of marijuana. Cannabis, 420, weed, joint, whatever you want to call it, it should be legalized. We're moving pretty good along the road, I think. Barring any detours, we should get there eventually. Right now, I am a licensed medical marijuana user in the state of Pennsylvania. I am able to visit dispensaries in this state and purchase not as much as you can in other places, but flower that is bud or cured weed. But then there's all kinds of concentrates and just the one thing we don't have in Pennsylvania is edibles, and we have this crazy law against smoking pot. And we tell you that the state tells you that you have to vape it, which is just insane because it doesn't work. At least not for me. So I continue to smoke it. I use a bong, but I've given up on all the other forms that I've tried during the last 2 years almost 2 years, year and a half that I've had the legal ability to purchase in the state of Pennsylvania. But right now, actually, the reason for tonight, the reason I want to bring up this topic is I want to give a little history of my marijuana involvement, if you want to call it that. But first off, I will preface this by saying that my 50th anniversary of smoking pot came on February the 11th of 2018. So not quite 2 years ago. So it'll be 52 years coming up. So, and I'll tell you what happened. The reason why I know that date is the date. Because on February the 10th of 1968, I landed in Vietnam as part of my service requirements. I signed up and ended up with orders, and I went to Vietnam. So that was my first day, February 10th. But on February the 11th of 1968, I had met the guy when I came in. Actually, I go back a little bit. I'll tell you the story. So I arrived in Vietnam on February 10th, 1968. Like any newbie to being in that country, and you're part of the army. So getting into Vietnam is easy. You fly in on a military vehicle, a plane, and there's no customs. There's nothing. There's nothing nobody to tell you to check your luggage or there's none of that. So you just get there, you sling your pack over your shoulder, your duffel bag, and you head for wherever they tell you. And then when I first got there, it was a bus. You get on a bus, the bus takes you to another place, and I was actually landed in my initial deployment was at Cam Ranh Bay in Vietnam. Anyway, so I got there, I don't know, late morning, early, I don't even remember what time of day it was. It was daylight, I know that. And even though it was January or February, it was hot. It was hot, hot, hot. But anyway, it wasn't raining and it wasn't muddy, so that was, it was just hot. But anyway, so you get to base, and some higher up person says to you, "You sleep in this building. Go get yourself a bunk." And that's what you do. So you go, you put your stuff away, and then there are formations you have to attend 3 times a day in order to get your orders, if you have them, to where you're going to be deployed to in Vietnam, what unit you're going to be arriving to, giving to, and that sort of thing. So you have a formation in the morning, you have a formation in midday, and you have a formation in the evening. And during that time, there's a roll call. Well, no, there's not a roll call. There's a head call if you have orders. If they call your name, you better be there, and you better respond, and they're going to give you your orders, and you're going to wherever you're supposed to go after that. Well, when I first got there, as I got into my barracks where I was going to be spending a few nights before shipping out to wherever I was going, there was a guy sitting in there on a bunk, and he had what seemed to be a little radio playing next to him, and he was listening to it. So I put my stuff on my bunk and sat down for a few minutes, and the guy says to me, "Are you going to formation?" And I said, I have no idea, because I didn't at that point. I didn't know what a formation, I knew what a formation was, but I didn't know when or where they were being held at this particular point. I had not been given that information. Anyway, this guy says, "Don't worry about it." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, don't go, because what I've got here," and he's pointing to this speaker he was listening to, is a tap on the speaker system at the formation grounds so that he could hear whatever was going on without actually being there in person. So, and it's not, it wasn't that far away from where we were. You could get there in 30 seconds, really, of running. But anyway, so he proceeded to explain to me that somebody else had created this speaker out of a transistor radio and had somehow managed to get some wire, and they had wired it up to the primary speaker system, spliced it in somehow, and so they could listen in the barracks. Now, the people that had done this had long since been shipped out to wherever they were going, but they used it to good effect. The point of it was so that you didn't have to go to formation, because when you were in that formation, there was 2 things that could happen to you. You could get your orders and prepare for deployment to wherever you're going in Vietnam, or you could be given a detail. A detail in Army talk is a job, and a job that usually nobody else wants, because you're a low man on the totem pole and you're going to get chosen for that particular job. So the guy that I met in the barracks that I was staying in had inherited this little device that allowed him to not get picked for anything, because he wasn't there. They didn't call you out by name when they were picking you for these details. They just went around and went, you. And one of the worst details of all was, and it's been portrayed on in the movies and stuff, and that's the shit burning detail. And it's not a joke. It's not unreal. It's not not made up. It actually happened. And what happens is they've got potties, set up, and underneath where you go is a can, and in that can you go, and it's about halfway full or so, they drag it to another location, pour kerosene on it, and start burning it to beat the band. And hopefully you don't have to do it, because standing around stirring shit and being burned with diesel fuel, oh, it just sucks. So this guy had figured out, or somebody else had figured out, and so this guy's now I'm I'm privy to this this trick. And so as soon as he was listening to the formation, I knew my name was too soon to get called anyway, so and I wasn't worried about that. But then he's like, "Okay, well, we're done. Like, where you want to do?" I said, "What do you mean, what do you want to do?" So he said, "You don't have anything to do between now and the next formation. They didn't call your name. You didn't get picked for a detail. You're a free man. I'm like, really? He said, yeah. He said, come on, come with me. So he took me out into Cameron, the base, not out into the economy or anything like that. You don't go that far. But there were some, little shops and stuff on base. There was a bar. It was pretty good. There were slot machines. You could play with. One of them actually was broken. Somebody had a rat tail comb and they were just kept pushing the coin back and pulling the lever. But they had already emptied it of all coins, so that hardly mattered anyway. But there were slot machines, there was beer to be had, and it was, lukewarm, if not, cold. Wasn't hot like it would happen later. But anyway, so I spent the day with this guy, and I don't even remember his name because he got called the next morning. His orders were, and boy, you should have seen him run out lickety split. As soon as you heard his name, he was out the door of the barracks and screaming, I'm here. Because if you're not there, it's not a good thing. You answer to when your name is called. I learned a little quick lesson on that one. He didn't get into it. He was fine. He got into his thing, but he got his orders and he was gone. So from that point on, whenever there was a formation, I listened to the little speaker and I never had to get on to, well, that's not true. Somebody came into the barracks one morning and I was I was there and I shouldn't have been. I should have gotten out there and gone and done something. But they picked me and I got one turn at shit detail. But anyway, it didn't matter. It was only a couple days. I turned it over to somebody else, the speaker, and told them the story. And then a day later or so, I got my orders and I was gone. But nonetheless, on February the 11th, after the second formation of the day, and I had turned somebody else onto the little speaker, that person, and I, again, don't remember the name of the person anymore. We didn't know each other that long, but he, for helping me, he somehow had scored pot somewhere. Either he came with it or but anyway, that he was the first person to turn me on to a joint, a little skinny thing, and so I smoked that for the first time on February the 11th, 1968. That was my intro into marijuana. So anyway, I have been smoking pot ever since. We're going to continue this discussion tomorrow as well, and maybe for a couple more days, because I'm going to go into my history with pot and what it's like today, and so just not a big deal. But first thing I'm going to do is clear up my history with pot. So that was my first time I smoked pot, and I think I smoked twice more before I got. Once more before I got my orders. Then I went out to my division, and somewhere along the first or second week I was in, somebody had pulled out a thing of pot and I smelled it, and I'm like, somebody finally said, hey, you want some of this? And so I did it there too. But that was only one time in the field, and that was in an evening, and I didn't smoke it again until I got back to the States, because I got shot not long after that. The third or fourth time I smoked, I think it was the third, but anyway, after that, I was shot shortly thereafter, and from that point on, and I never had access to pot again for, a long time. I didn't have it when I came back home on leave. I didn't have access. We were in Kentucky, and nobody even knew about pot in 1968 in Kentucky, I don't think. Maybe some people knew about hemp, but anyway, this discussion is definitely over. I'm down to my last 15 seconds, so we're going to continue it tomorrow night. Hope you had an interest. I'll continue on my history. So good night, take care, look out for your fellow man. See you later. I'll see you tomorrow. We'll continue.